Hey guys, happy new moon in Leo. It's gonna happen on 8/8 in the early hours of the morning. And of course, the sun and the moon will be right on top of each other at 16 degrees Leo. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly I want to do with these videos, so I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet and just focus on how we can use this Leo archetype that we all have within us to go deeper, to help us do this inner work, the building a relationship of ourselves, getting to know ourselves, doing that healing work. So for me, on my inward journey, I have found three things to be incredibly important. And that is to be kind to ourselves in this process, to be brave in going within, and to be open and honest about whatever we find. So openness and honesty, to me, go hand in hand. The compassion aspect, I think, fits really well with the Cancer archetype that I talked about a month ago. This bravery aspect is the heart, is the center of what Leo really is. And again, we all have it within us to tap into, but it's incredibly important for doing this work because it's scary to face our shadows, and it's scary to want to go within. I think we spend a lot of time distracting or numbing or simply pushing it away, even denying or feeling shame over it to the point that it makes it really hard to dig into things. And that's where this bravery aspect of Leo comes in. Leo, being a fire sign and coming after Aries, is sort of the expansion of the ego, which might seem counterintuitive to this process, but our ego is incredibly important. The inner work, the inner journey that I'm doing, that I speak of, isn't to go beyond the ego necessarily, isn't to attain enlightenment where the ego is fully destroyed, but instead harnessing the ego in a healthy way, along with higher consciousness, along with being in our bodies, along with tapping into our heart and our soul. And the ego is an important aspect of this, and we need it to function in a human way. We need the ego to be human. So the goal, the way I see things, isn't necessarily to try to shy away from the ego or to hear it but then leave it aside. It is to use it in harmony with the other aspects of our existence. The ego, of course, helps us survive. It helps us understand the structures of both our environment and society. It helps give us this drive, this creative power, even the sense of authority or rightness that often doesn't exist in the more subliminal layers of consciousness, where we understand things as interconnected, or we experience things through the more yin side, the more receptive side of things. We need this Leo, the fiery passion, and the force and the drive of the ego to really bring things into manifestation, bring things into creation, which is an important theme for right now as the moon is occurring on 8/8, and 8 being the infinity sign flipped upright. 8/8 has a lot of that symbolism, that meaning for us, that this truly is a time to manifest, to bring through us what we want to create into this world, to bring in abundance, to bring in joy in what we create in particular, and find the abundance flowing from that. So with this new moon, we can really take a moment, take that pause to go within and ask ourselves, where are we brave? Where does that bravery come from? How can we have the courage to go within, to look at ourselves openly and honestly, and of course with the compassion from Cancer, because this step is vitally important to this work, to knowing who we are, to going deeper, to being able to see all aspects of ourselves as we are in this moment, to know ourselves deeply, and to start to build this relationship with ourselves. From this inner knowing, we can then use this Leo fiery energy to create from our sense of self. So Leo is all about creating around the self, creating oneself. It takes the spark of ego, the spark of sense of self from Aries, and really forms it into this complete being that we are, and one that radiates, that shines, that is full of joy and passion and brings in this life energy. Leo is ruled by the sun, so we're talking about our creative life force, our vitality, our creative passion, how we radiate into the world. And Leo allows us to do this bravely, courageously, joyfully. Leo allows us to show up as we are, to be seen as we are, and know that that's enough. Know that we are perfect just as we are. Leo allows us to be bold and to be seen. And in this way, we can radiate our light to the rest of the world. And as we move into Libra season, we'll talk more about how it's so important how we carry ourselves because it is so intrinsically connected to everything else. But when we share our purest light to the world from our most authentic and joyful sense of self, then we truly do create that light and that radiance in the world around us. Personally, I have Chiron in Leo, so for me, this can be really scary. It can be really tricky to show up on social media, show up as I am, show up in this process of learning and understanding where I don't feel that I always know enough, or that I've done enough legwork, that I have enough followers, or whatever else it may be, that I can't share my wisdom because I haven't attained the wisest way of being in this universe yet. But by working with this energy in a positive way, I can see these wounds I have around creation, around bringing into manifestation the things that are deepest in my heart, that come from that most authentic sense of self, that truly are born from my deepest experiences, my deepest sense of purpose, my deepest connection to myself. I learned through this wound that I can show up imperfect, and that I'm still whole, and I'm still worthy, and I can still radiate an important light and joy out into the world. So this new moon is really a lovely time for us to sit with ourselves, to take a moment to go within and ask what it is that we want to bring into ourselves and our life and our inner processes in these next 6 months. How can we be braver when we look within ourselves, when we see those shadows, when we dig into those really uncomfortable places? Or how can we be braver in showing up fully as ourselves, showing up as imperfect, perfect humans? How can we be brave enough to know that there's still more to uncover, there's still more work to do, there's still more growth and healing to step into, but also be unapologetically who we are in this moment, as we are? In what part of our lives can we be little suns that radiate light out into the rest of the world, into all parts of ourselves? And how can we trust that working on ourselves, that doing these important inner processes, that being selfish in that way, focusing on ourselves, is creating more light for the rest of the world? Again, the moon being on 8/8 reminds us, as above, so below, as within, so without. Taking that sacred selfishness to go within, to be brave, to put ourselves first, so that we can create a more grounded, in touch, healed, and constantly evolving sense of who we are. And trusting that will not only help the world as a whole move closer to light, but also understand that once we work on ourselves, we will see these important healing processes reflected in the world around us as well. Trusting that as we heal ourselves, the world is healed too. And trusting that in whatever way feels right to us, it is our divine purpose to know ourselves, to be in relationship with ourselves, that's loving, that's unconditionally loving, that's incredibly brave and accepting and creating from all pieces of ourselves. I was talking to a friend recently who she was describing her own inner processes as being in touch with her shadows, inviting them to tea so that we may sit and talk and know each other. That process, it takes bravery, it takes courage, and that's what Leo gives us. I want to take this one step further. Instead of once knowing those shadows, we dismiss them. We say, no thank you, not welcome here, you're not part of us. Instead, just trying it out, see how it feels to use that bravery to then say, instead of, no thank you, I don't want you, I want to change you, to those shadows, saying instead, it's okay, I love you, and you belong. Everyone will have their own inner journey, everyone has their own processes to healing, but this has been the most influential part of mine, is being able to sit down to tea with my shadows, and instead of wanting to know them so that I can change them, so that I can change myself, so that I can be only light and not shadow, I instead use that courage to sit down with them and create belonging, create space for every part of myself. I talked about this a month ago with Cancer season, but this is perhaps the most important part of this work that I've done personally, is instead of wanting to create a perfect sense of self, create a being that is free of anger, is free of resentment, is free of shame, is free of guilt. Instead of focusing on changing who I am, I focus on changing the relationship I have with myself. So instead of meeting these pieces that are unpleasant, with aversion, with rejection, I can meet them instead with compassion, with acceptance, and with unconditional love. And simply by meeting myself that way, I am rewiring pathways in my brain that react to these uncomfortable things with these aversive tendencies, and instead meet them with compassion, and I'm rewiring my brain towards the response of compassion rather than the reaction of aversion. And this has made the biggest change in my life. So again, my form of Leo isn't to create a perfect self and radiate from there, is instead to create an unconditionally loving relationship with myself. And from that, learn how to respond to more and more situations, more and more uncomfortable emotions or actions with compassion instead. In short, becoming a more compassionate person. Obviously, I'm not perfect, but my goal isn't to be perfect. My goal is to go deeper. So I call upon this bravery, this courage of Leo, the strength to show up just how I am. I call upon it as not only an essential aspect of this process of going within, but also the archetype that helps bring me forward, allows me to step out into the world and share what it is that I've learned, what it is that I've gained, and how I want to share all of this, my inner journey with you. So thank you for joining me once again for a new moon video. I hope that you have time this weekend to sit quietly, to go within, to set intentions, and simply to get back in touch with that inner sun, that inner light. And know that no matter how much shadow we might sense within ourselves, we always have that light. It's always there, and we can draw upon it to illuminate our shadows, to use that bravery to look at our shadows, and know that we are whole, and that we are perfect, and we are worthy no matter how we are. And that we can share our light with the world, and that creates more light into the world. So I hope you have a good new moon. Thank you so much again for joining me. I will be back in a couple weeks.